Hi, and welcome to Mrs. PM Reads, where we are continuing with The Magic Circle by Katherine Neville. In our last video, Uncle Laugh was talking to Ariel about his mother, I believe. So his mother, Hermione, had married somebody from South Africa, Christian Alexander, I think his name was. And then he passed, and she then married Hieronymus Ben. But Christian Alexander, I think, was Lap's father. And so that's kind of, and then they had Mr. and Mrs. Behn had a son together, Ernest, I think, which became Lap's half brother. So now we're continuing. Okay, so and they sent him to boarding school. And so he went to see his mother in Vienna. And that was the last, he did not know it would be the last time he saw her. And that's where we go. I learned that my mother was dying before I saw her. I was sitting opposite large double doors in the big drafty hall on a straight-backed chair upholstered in hard leather and waiting. Beside me, to my left, waited two new acquaintances, my half-brother and sister, Ernest and Zoe. The sister, Zoe, was fidgeting in her chair, yanking at her blonde corkscrew curls and trying to pull the carefully arranged ribbons out of her hair. Ooh, sorry, watching a bird out the window do a dive into a pond. All right, Mummy doesn't want me to wear ribbons, she was complaining. She's very sick and they scratch her face when I kiss her. This child's rather odd personality was hardly that of a 6-year-old girl. She was more like a Prussian officer, while the serious Ernest still had an awkward trace of that South African twang I'd lost in 8 years at an Austrian boarding school. This little terror spoke in a bossy, patrician, high German, and possessed by self-containment of Attila the Hun. I'm sure your nanny wouldn't want to displease her mistress by letting your ribbons scratch her, I replied, trying to appease her so she'd settle down. Though it seemed inappropriate to say her mistress, I found it hard to refer to the woman I knew was lying in a bed just beyond those doors as mother. I wasn't sure what I would feel when at last I saw her. I scarcely remembered her at all. Our brother Ernest wasn't saying much, just sitting there beside Zoe with his hands folded in his lap. He was pale, almost flawlessly handsome version of the more rugged, chiseled profile of his father, combined with that glorious ash blonde hair of our mother. I thought him really beautiful, like an angel from a painting, a combination that, in a rough boys' school like mine, would not have found an asset. She's dying, you know, Zoe informed me, pointing with her small hand toward the forbidding double doors across the hall. This may be the last time any of us will see her, so the least they could do is make it so she can kiss me goodbye. Dying, I said, hearing the word echo in the darkened corridor. I felt something hard and numb forming within my chest. How could my mother be dying? She was so young the last time I'd seen her, and all those pictures of her on my dresser at school, so beautiful and so young. Illness, perhaps, but death was something I was totally unprepared for. It's awful, said Zoe, really disgusting. Ugh. Her brains are spilling out. Not just her brains, there's some hideous and creepy growing in the dark inside her head. They had to cut a hole in her head bones so that she wouldn't get squashed. So stop it, said Ernest softly. Then he looked sadly at me, his pale gray eyes shadowed by long, thick lashes. I was in shock. But before I had time to collect myself, the large doors opened and Hieronymus Behn stepped into the corridor. I hadn't seen him earlier that evening when I'd been collected from the train. I hardly recognized him in the full mutton chop whiskers then in fashion, but underneath, the outline of his handsome sculptural face remained virile, and strong, lacking the soft complacency one often found in the Austrian upper class. He seemed in complete command of the situation, unmoved by any such horrors as Zoe described that might lie beyond those doors. Lafcadio, you may come in now and see your mother, Hieronymus informed me. But when I tried to stand, I found my legs were trembling, and the cold lump moved into my throat where it stuck like a block of ice. I'll come too, Zoe announced, on her feet beside me, her small hand thrust into mine. As she marched toward the doors with me in tow, my stepfather remained in our path. His brow furrowed slightly, and he seemed about to speak. But just then, Ernest stood up and joined us. No, we'll all go in there together, we children, he said quietly. I know father will think that best, since it will tire our mother the very least. Of course, said Hieronymus, after only a heartbeat's pause, and he stepped aside for all of us children to pass through the high paneled doors. This was the first time, but it was not to be the last, that I would see the quiet self-possession of Ernest prevail over the clear and strong-willed intentions of Hieronymus Behn. No one else could ever do so. Despite my late father's wealth, the grandeur of our plantations in Africa, or the resplendence of the many estates I'd since seen around Salzburg, I had never once in my young life set foot inside a room as grand as the one that lay behind those doors. It was as awesome as the interior of a cathedral. The high ceilings, lavish furniture and accessories and hangings, the rich jewel-like colors of imported stained glass lamps, the silky liquid lines of crystal bowls filled with flowers, the mellow sheen of polished pieces of costly Biedermeier. Zoe had told me, as we'd waited in the hall, that the lower floors of our house had already been converted to that new energy source, electricity, which I knew had been installed a decade ago by Thomas Alva Edison himself at the Schönbrunn Palace right here in Vienna. But my mother's room was lit by the soft yellow glow of gas lamps and warmed by a fire that flickered behind the panels of a low glass screen set before the hearth across the room. I hope I never see such a sight again as that of my mother lying in the enormous canopied bed, her face bleached whiter than the lace counterpane. She weighed next to nothing. She was like a sucked out husk about to crumble to dust and blow away. The cap covering her head could not conceal that her hair had been shaved, but thank God it hid the rest of the story. I should never have believed this was my mother. In my childish memory, she was the beautiful woman who'd sung me to sleep with her lovely voice until the age of 4. When she turned those watery blue eyes on me now, I wanted to cover my own eyes and to run, sobbing, from the room. I wanted not to think again of my lost childhood, of an abandonment that now could neither be undone nor atoned for. My stepfather leaned with folded arms against the dark wainscoting beside the entry doors, his cold, immobile eyes focused upon the bed. A small group of servants hovered near the hearth, some silently sobbing or folding each other's arms, watching as we children crossed the room to our mother's bedside. God help me, but I only wanted her to vanish as if swallowed by the earth. As if in support, Zoe's tiny hand squeezed mine, and I heard Ernest's voice beside me as we reached the bed. Lafcadio is here, Mother, he said. He would like your blessing. Our mother's lips were moving, and Ernest again helped by lifting little Zoe up onto the bed. He poured out a glass of water and handed it to Zoe, who fed it drop by drop between our mother's parched lips. She was trying to whisper something, so Zoe took it upon herself to translate. I found it eerie and unnatural to hear what were perhaps the last words of a dying woman emerging from the rosebud lips of a 6-year-old child. Lafcadio, my mother said, via little Zoe, I give you my blessing with all my heart. I want you to know I feel the greatest pain that we've been parted for so long. Your stepfather thought we believed it best for your education. Even whispering through Zoe seemed to be a great effort, and I was frankly praying she'd find herself too weak to go on. Of the many reunions with my mother I'd naturally imagined over the years, none had been like this. A leave-taking before teary onlookers being barely welcomed at the last possible moment into a family of complete strangers. It was positively ghoulish. I could barely wait for it to end. I was so distraught, I nearly missed the critical words. So, your stepfather has generously offered to adopt you, taking responsibility for your well-being and education, as if you were one of his own children. I pray you will embrace and care for one another as such. I've signed the papers only today. You are now Lafcadio Behn, full brother to Ernest and Zoe. Adopted me? Good Lord, how could I become the son of a man I scarcely knew? Was I given no choice in the matter? Was this horrid opportunist who tricked his way into my mother's bed now to be in control of my education, my life, and my family's property? Aghast, I suddenly realized that when my mother died, I would no longer have any family. A rage struck me, that dark, despairing rage that could perhaps only be so deeply felt by children who are completely impotent over their own destiny. I was about to dash from the room in tears when a hand touched me lightly on the shoulder. I expected my stepfather, who'd been behind me only moments before. Instead, there stood the most astonishing creature, regarding me through eyes of a deep, clear green, with mercurial fire burning in their depths, the eyes of a wild animal. Her face, framed by an unbound mane of dark hair, seemed the sort found in paintings of Odines, creatures arisen from the sparkling magical realms of the sea. She was absolutely ravishing, and despite my youth, I was well prepared to be ravished by her, having forgotten all about Mr Behn, my future, my despair, even my dying mother lying on the bed. She spoke in a strange, foreign-sounding accent and a voice so musical that it seemed rich with hidden bells. So this is our little English Lord Sterling. She smiled at me. I'm Pandora, your mother's friend and companion. Was it only my imagination that she'd stressed the word mothers? She didn't look old enough to be her companion. Perhaps she meant paid companion. But she'd also said friend, hadn't she? When Hieronymus came forward to address her, Pandora slipped past him as if she hadn't noticed, and went instead to the bed where my mother lay. Plucking little Zoe like a loose pillow from the counterpane, she casually tossed the child over one shoulder. Zoe twisted her head to look at me upside down. She raised one eyebrow in wise judgment, as if we shared an interesting secret. Frau Hermione, Pandora said to my mother, if I were a fairy here at your bedside, and I said that you could make 3 wishes before you died, 1 wish on behalf of each of your children, what would your wishes be? There was whispering amongst the servants, no doubt shocked as I was at the cavalier manner in which this new arrival had brushed aside the master of the household and was treating the mistress's impending death and last wishes almost as a parlor game. But far more surprising was the change in my mother. Color infused that death-like pallor, flushing her cheeks with a rosy glow. As she and Pandora locked eyes, a beatific smile lit her face. Though I shall always swear that neither woman spoke a single word, it seemed that a communication passed between them. After a long moment, Mother nodded. When she closed her eyes, she was still smiling. Pandora, with Zoe swinging from her shoulder like a fur neck piece, turned toward the rest of us. As you children know, it's bad luck to cast wishes abroad on the winds. It breaks the spell, she announced. So I'll tell each of you, in secret, your mother's wish. Perhaps Pandora was a fairy, or sorceress, as she seemed. She slid Zoe from her shoulder onto the bed and tugged the starchy hair ribbons, shaking her head. My poor girl, you've been trussed and trimmed like a Christmas goose, she told Zoe. And as if she knew of our earlier conversation outside in the hallway, she pulled the stiff ribbons from Zoe's hair while whispering Mother's wish into her ear. Then she said, now you can go and give your mother a kiss and thank her for your wish. Zoe scrambled across the bed and did as bidden. Then Pandora went to Ernest, whispering to him likewise, and the same procedure was followed. I found it hard to believe that where I was concerned, there'd be much more to say in the wish department. How could my mother make a wish for me when she'd just admitted that behind my back, I'd been sold like chattel to Mr Behn, who'd wasted no time demolishing my future hopes as thoroughly as he'd done to my present and my past. Maybe it was my imagination that my stepfather, who was still standing near me, stiffened as Pandora approached us in her rustling gray silk gown. For the first time since she'd entered the room, she not only seemed to take notice of him, she looked him directly in the eye, but with an expression I couldn't fathom. Putting her hand on my shoulder again, she leaned to my ear so her cheek brushed mine. I could smell the warm aroma of her skin, and I tingled with the same excitement as before. But her next words, spoken with great insistence, made my blood run cold. You must show no reaction to anything. You must go along with whatever I say, she whispered urgently. We're all in great danger because of your presence here, you most of all. I cannot explain until you get outside of this house filled with spies and lies and pain. I will try to arrange this for you tomorrow. Understood? Danger? What sort of danger? I understood nothing, but I nodded my head to show I would make no reaction. Pandora pressed my shoulder firmly and went back to the bed, taking Mother's hand as she addressed the servants. Frau Behn is happy to see her children together at last, Pandora informed them, but even so brief a visit has taken her strength. We must leave her to rest now. But before the servants had filed out, Pandora called to my stepfather across the room. Herr Behn, your wife would also like you to have the carriage prepared first thing in the morning, so I may take the children for an outing around Vienna together before Lafcadio returns to his school. My stepfather's eyes flickered for a moment as he stood beside me, halfway between the bed and the door. He seemed to hesitate before bowing his head slightly to her. With pleasure, he said, though it didn't sound it. He turned and left the room. Okay, well, that all sounds a little ominous, doesn't it? All right, that's where we're going to stop for today. Hey, I have noticed when I look at the analytics of the channel that most people are not subscribed. I've got plenty of people watching, but you're not subscribed, which is fine, but just want to mention, if you are enjoying the story and you don't want to miss a video, when you hit the subscribe button and the little bell tab, you'll start getting notifications every time a new video is posted. Easy peasy, right? All right, you guys, have a great day, and I will see you next time. Bye.